Very good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our much-awaited webinar on AI in healthcare. Now, we chose this topic because AI in healthcare is a relatively new field, the buzz around which had just begun before the pandemic struck. And the pandemic has exposed the issues and shortfalls in the healthcare sector. And as everyone is rushing to bridge the gaps in the healthcare provision, we believe that the contribution of bioinformatics in conjunction with AI has the potential to transform, enhance, and aid the sector. We have 4 eminent speakers with us today, experts from both academia and industry, to share their valuable insights in this field. But before we begin, let me just start off with telling you guys a little bit about who we are and exactly what it is that we do. So ISCB-SC, the International Society of Computational Biology Student Council, is an international student body which has 26 regional student groups all over the world. And it aims to promote interaction among students pursuing research in the field of bioinformatics and computational biology, and to build a community of computational biologists who can collaborate and guide each other. Now, RSG-India is the regional student group of India, part of ISCB-SC. And it aims to create a space in India that unites students who are interested in this multidisciplinary field of computational biology. We want to create a platform for networking, ideation, and to spread awareness about this field and the scope of this field. We have members from all over the country who I will soon be introducing. Recently, we have started an initiative called CombioCells. So we are trying to open nodal representations of RSG-India in various universities across India. And the most recent addition to this family is the nodal representation of IIIT-Delhi. And basically what this initiative helps us do is network more with computational biology departments in various universities across India and, learn and grow together. Should you wish to open a nodal representation at your university, do mention it in the feedback form and we will get back to you as soon as possible. These are this is just an overview of our initiatives as RSG-India. We have workshops and student symposiums. We have ComBio discussion groups. So ComBio discussion groups were, they're just like CombioCells. Now we have, it's a similar initiative, but now we call them CombioCells. And we have scientific and academic competitions and webinars, one of which you are attending today. I will just quickly go over the recent activities that we have had since 2018. And we have had a scientific writing competition in August and September of 2018. The same year, we also had a panel discussion on career opportunities in computational biology and bioinformatics in the 17th International Conference of Bioinformatics at IIIT-Delhi. We successfully organized our first student symposium titled Computational Biology Connecting Domains of Biology on the 22nd of November 2019 at IIIT-Delhi. And we also conducted a session at the IITM Tokyo Tech Joint Symposium at IIT Madras on the topic bioinformatics and big data and the career scope and the future in the said field. In the pandemic, we have held 3 webinars. The first one titled Mental Health Issues in Young Researchers in October of 2020. And the webinar after that was on intellectual property rights in bioinformatics, which was held in 2020 December. And the recent webinar that we've had was on transition to computational biology. Since this is a multidisciplinary field, the transition can be a little daunting. So we had speakers from various academic backgrounds who came and spoke about their journey and their experiences, the good and the bad of transitioning into this field. It was held in the May of 2021. These are just pictures of the events that we had when they were still offline. This is the student symposium at GNU in 2019. This is the IIT-IIM Tokyo Tech Joint Symposium in 2020. And this is the webinar on mental health issues in young researchers that we had in 2020, and IPR in bioinformatics, and the recent webinar that we had in transition to computational biology. This is our team. We have students from JNU, IIT Madras, ETH Zurich, IIT Roorkee, VIT Vellore, and ISC Bangalore, and ACL Technologies as well, excuse me. These are our faculty advisors. We have Dr. Rita Sharma, she's an associate professor at BITS Pilani, and Dr. Arjun Ray, he's an assistant professor at IIIT-Delhi. And our honorary members who just finished their leadership tenure early this year, Shruti Gupta from JNU, Ambut Srivastava, he is now doing his postdoctoral work in UC San Diego, and Manisha Kausan from JNU. Should you wish to join us, please feel free to drop an email at rsg-india@iscb-SC.org, and you can visit our website where we have a form where you can fill it if you want to join us, if you want to open a node, and you can always contact us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And I would also like to thank and introduce our media partner, Forethought India. It's an educational platform that integrates students with the finest professors in the world, and it's a huge supporter of free and open education. It does so through webinars, courses, and internships, and it aims to build a community dedicated to all Indian students who want to communicate, learn, and grow together. Now, we will discuss the survey results from our registration forms for this event, and I'll hand it over to Shankar to go through the results.
Yeah. So starting with subject majors, we have people from various backgrounds, ranging from medical doctors to MBA professionals, with majorly in biotechnology and bioinformatics. Over 60% of the participants are new to the field of AI, of which 52% have not worked in this field so far. And 55% have been working in computational biology for at least a year. Of these, the most preferred language for the same is Python, followed by R. Regarding future plans, a sizable fraction is ready to explore both academia and the industry. With this information, we have 4 talks covering the different aspects of AI in healthcare, aiming to improve your understanding of its application in healthcare. So, for this webinar, we'll have 2 sessions. Session 1 is focused on the impact of AI on food and health industry. The speakers for the same are Professor Ganesh Bagler from IIIT-Delhi and Dr. Aman Iqbal from Vantage Enterprise. And session 2 is focused on the impact of AI on disease diagnostics and drug development. The speakers for this session are Dr. Elson from ETH Zurich and Dr. Anusha from Ohio State University. And the rules for the webinar are as follows. So there will be a keynote talk that is dedicated to a time of 45 minutes, and the invited talks are for 35 minutes. The chat box will not be active during the talk and will only be open 5 minutes before the end of each talk. The participants will be notified of it, and they can ask your questions by typing in the chat box. Please refrain from typing anything else from the questions to be asked. Please do not post any compliments or greetings, as it would misread the questions. And the chat box will again be deactivated once the next talk starts. Over to Arfa.
Thank you, Shankar. So let's start our first session with our keynote speaker, Professor Ganesh Bagler. Professor Ganesh Bagler is known for the pioneering research in computational gastronomy, the emerging data science that blends with food with artificial intelligence. Trailblazing research from his lab has established foundations of this niche area that deals with food, flavors, nutrition, and health. Professor Bagler has an audacious team of transforming the global food landscape through the data-driven innovations. He has PhD in computational biology from CSIR, Central for Cellular and Molecular Biology, and has received his postdoctoral training from NCBS Bangalore and MPI-MG Berlin. He is credited with observation of associative mixing in residue interaction graph models of protein structures, as well as discovery of exceptional negative food pairing in Indian cuisine. His research involves questions on the interface of biology, medicine, and computational sciences. We welcome you, Professor Bagler. Thank you for joining us today. Over to you. You may share your screen.
Thank you, Arfa. Yeah, I'll share the screen now. I hope the slides are visible.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, let me get started. So first of all, at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, all student members as well as other organizers, for having me in this webinar. I know that the focus is pretty much around food, AI, and healthcare. So this particular talk, I'll be focusing on the thematic area of computational gastronomy. And having got to know that most of the people who are present here are from the area of bioinformatics and biotechnology, and some overlapping areas in AI and related topics, I would like to keep it at a level which is ideally accessible to most of you. And of course, you are most welcome to pose your questions towards the end of the talk by around in around 40 minutes or so. So computational gastronomy is a new niche that is being developed in my lab. I'll be elaborating it as I go along. Our agenda is to make food computable, and in the process, trying to use tools such as machine learning and artificial intelligence for coming up with various interesting applications. That's what we are trying to do under the brand name of Computational Gastronomy. I come from Indraprasth Institute of Information Technology, Delhi. I'm part of Department of Computational Biology as well as Infosys Center for Artificial Intelligence, wherein we are trying to use the tools of computer science and AI in contextual topics, which includes computational biology and which is pertaining to today's talk, which is gastronomy. I, as a teenager, had been wanting always to be an astronomer and to discover new stars. So it has been a journey from astronomy to gastronomy, I must say. Over the time, things have changed dramatically, and I ended up serendipitously hitting upon this new topic of computational gastronomy, which is so called in retrospect. There was no name to it when we started off with this work. So this journey has taken me from various places, right from physics to astrophysics, to computational science techniques, to all the way up to computational biology, computational neuroscience, and has reached to present state where we are working on food exclusively using the tools of computer science. And that's a long journey that I have taken, and I would like to connect upon it. And I would like to tell you that while we, as most of you know, that while you're working on problems, applied problems and trying to solve problems in biology and medicine and healthcare, you obviously have to have background in a variety of domains, which may include physics, mathematics, or computer science for that matter. My lab is called the Complex Systems Laboratory, wherein we are trying to investigate systems, biological systems predominantly, which are complex in the sense that they are systems comprising of large number of sophisticated elements which are subtly interconnected so as to perform specific tasks which cannot be otherwise executed by the subset of the system. I know it's a mouthful of a definition. However, in summary, all of these systems that we are referring to, whether it is a protein structure, cellular mechanisms underlying various phenomena, including complex diseases or brain networks for that matter, all of these have a characteristic feature, and that is of emergent properties. Sum of the parts is not the same as the whole. Understanding individual components in thorough detail doesn't necessarily guarantee you a full understanding of the system as a whole. And that is where emergent properties pop up. My lab takes pride in being the ground zero of computational gastronomy. As I said, the term computational gastronomy itself was coined in my lab, and we have been propagating this thought of application of computational tools in the context of food and gastronomy, trying to come up with interesting applications, which is what I'll be elaborating as I go along. And while we do so, in my lab, we have been working on a variety of topics beyond computational gastronomy as well, in which we have been asking hypothesis-driven questions, creating secondary databases, as well as coming up with applications whenever possible from the science that we do. Coming to the topic of today's talk, and that is food and cooking. Turns out that cooking is a magical process of transforming raw ingredients to create delicious recipes that we all admire, and enjoy. So cooking is alchemy in summary, and cultures across the world have found ways by which they have figured out how to put idiosyncratic ways the ingredients are put together to be able to generate new and different type of recipes. And that is how we have the different type of cuisines, like we have languages in different parts of the world. So the cultures have imbibed these culinary practices, which is what is the focus of today's talk. Incidentally, the disproportionately large brain sizes that Homo sapiens have, the human beings have, has been attributed partly to the fact that we have invented cooking. Notice that no other species has found ways of putting ingredients together and processing them in a sophisticated manner the way human beings do. So apart from language, it looks like the ability of cooking, a very sophisticated way of cooking, is something which is very unique to human beings and has opened up ways by which over the evolutionary timelines, it has increased, it has facilitated the increase in brain sizes. While that has happened, it is argued that the ability of cooking itself has made us what we are in terms of being human. This is the argument which is made by Richard Wrangham in his book, Catching Fire, How Cooking Made Us Human, right? Despite the fact that apparently cooking seems to be the key factor which has made us what we are in terms of the species that we are, advanced species that we are, and having brain sizes which has given rise to the abstract thinking and creative abilities that we have. Ironically speaking, this cartoon depicts that we have ended up coming up with our own set of problems, which has got roots in food as well, the dietary practices that we have. The lifestyle disorders such as obesity, cardiovascular disorders, type 2 diabetes, all of them that we are plagued today and seem to be the time bomb on which we are sitting, have multiple factors that have contributed towards it. We can blame it on the genes, the social ambience, the sedentary lifestyles, or importantly, the diet that we consume. So the diet seems to be one of the critical factors. And the question that we are asking is that, unlike what has been done until today, are we going to look at food only from an artistic perspective, or are we going to invoke the data-driven perspective of looking at food and diet, coming up with a completely new science of computational gastronomy? And this seems to be an interesting way of looking at food, also given the fact that we shall be very soon be staring at the problem of feeding 10 billion 50, and that problem cannot be solved unless we invoke the latest tools and techniques that are present, that are being made available as part of the computer science paradigm, including machine learning and artificial intelligence. So in 21st century, can we use data as our currency when we think about the food? And that is where our lab has come up with this mantra of making food computable. Can we slice down different aspects of food and convert them into their digital counterparts, apply various tools of computer science, and find ways of understanding food, diet better, as well as come up with interesting applications that stem out of this data-centric or data-driven approach to food? That's what we're trying to do. Notice that in the last few decades, different aspects of our lives have got dramatically transformed with the introduction of data and computing, whether it is weather prediction, railway reservation systems, maps, transportation, or image recognition, face recognition. Many aspects of our life seem to be dramatically changing with the introduction of a large amount of data and sophisticated computational techniques for investigating them. So how do we look at food to make it computable? What we have done so far in the last roughly 7 years of existence of this niche of computational gastronomy is to look at food from its traditional recipes point of view, because notice what we eat on a day-to-day basis are the products of culture. They are the recipes which are passed down from generation to generation. And this is what we consume. We don't consume something which is coming out of the void. So can we understand these traditional recipes and their composition from a data-driven perspective? That's one of the questions that one can ask. The second thing that we are looking at is the taste and odor of natural ingredients which are used in the recipes. The tomatoes, the onions, all of these are used in the recipes by virtue of their flavors, the taste and the odor that they elicit when you consume them by interacting with the gustatory and olfactory mechanisms. So can we understand the flavor basis of these ingredients? Further, nutritional aspect. The nutritional profile of these ingredients is extremely critical in terms of what kind of macronutrients as well as micronutrients we end up consuming by virtue of eating a dish. And finally, the final aspect that we have looked at is that of health impact of ingredients. We have obviously heard about various claims about ingredients being good or bad for different aspects of our health. And can we investigate them, study them in a little more rigorous fashion by application of tools coming from data science? These are the 4 dimensions that we have investigated, have constructed databases and algorithms in each of these dimensions. So in summary, computational gastronomy is a data science which blends food, data, and the power of computation for achieving data-driven food innovations. That is what computational gastronomy is in a nutshell. Way back in 2015, we looked at Indian recipes, and we investigated 2,543 Indian recipes coming from the different cuisines across the length and the breadth of the country, and looked at what could be called as the food pairing phenomena, meaning what kind of ingredients tend to go well with each other, given the fact that they are part of traditional recipes, vis-a-vis ingredients that don't go well with each other. When you do this investigation, turns out that, interestingly, apart from a characteristic food pairing pattern, which is rather unique in the context of Indian recipes, we also found out that culinary herbs and spices are extremely important in terms of being the molecular fulcrum of Indian recipes. That's what we have found and have published in these couple of research articles. One is on Archive and the other one is published in PLOS ONE. And these articles indicate to the fact, which we already know, those who devour and love Indian food would obviously appreciate the fact that spices indeed are critical, not in terms of their quantity, but in terms of their positioning, in terms of which spice is used in which recipe, makes a huge difference in terms of the final taste and odor that we end up experiencing when you consume that recipe. So this was an interesting observation that we did way back. Apart from identification of what could be called as the culinary fingerprints, similar to the DNA fingerprint, which uniquely identifies an individual, we figured out ways of characterizing each cuisine. Think of a cuisine as a bunch of recipes, and each of the recipe is nothing but a bunch of ingredients to begin with. I know it's a very trivial way of looking at a recipe, but however, you can stick to this definition for the moment. And if you were to look at ways by which some of these ingredients, some 1,000-odd ingredients that are available, the way they are put together in a characteristic fashion in the recipes of a given cuisine, is there any idiosyncratic pattern that arises out of it? If you quantify it without getting into the mathematical nitty-gritties, then that pattern, as shown for the South Indian cuisine right here, indicates what could be called as the culinary fingerprint, which uniquely distinguishes recipes of a given cuisine, such as South Indian, vis-a-vis, let's say, Punjabi, Maharashtrian, or Bengali cuisine for that matter. Having said that, this particular research that we did way back in 2015 ended up being highlighted as an emerging technology by none other than MIT Technology Review. And in fact, we were pleasantly surprised to see that MIT Tech Review has highlighted our work as best of 2015 by the end of the year. And in fact, the fact that investigation, the data-driven investigation of recipes, cuisines, and the flavors can be an emerging science technology was something which was surprising for us to begin with, given the fact that ours was a curiosity-driven experiment that we had conducted in the context of Indian cuisine. Apart from getting a lot of attention from academia, even media highlighted our work at a variety of places. I do not know how many of you read this column called Root Food by Veer Sanghvi in Hindustan Times, but he pointed out to the research that we have done in the context of Indian cuisine in this article called The Magic of Indian Spices, which eventually ended up becoming a chapter in his book called The Indian Pantry. And of course, other than that, there were more than 200 media houses across the world which highlighted our research and said that this is the emerging trend in the context of food and gastronomy. The practitioners of food, chefs, and culinary enthusiasts were not far behind. Michelin star chefs such as Chef Garima Arora, Chef Manjit Gill, and many others were not far behind in accepting the fact that this is one of the novel trends in terms of looking at the science behind the food from a mathematical and computational perspective, trying to dig down all the way up to ingredients, flavors, and their compositions, trying to come up with the patterns that are present in them. And these chefs are obviously wanting to use the science that we have created to innovate recipes and come up with interesting new recipes that can be propagated as part of their kitchens and restaurants that they are operating. Chemistry World, which is part of the Royal Society of Chemistry, also came up with this article called Currying Flavor, talking about the unique pattern that we had found in the context of Indian cuisine vis-a-vis the world cuisine. And finally, the industry was not far behind in recognizing the fact that our research in computational gastronomy was on the sweet spot of food, given the fact that for the first ever time, we were finding ways of blending food, data, and computer science in an innovative manner. Having said and told you about the story which has happened way back in 2015, the idea was to lay down the future, the vision for the future. And while doing so, we came up with this mantra and thought of making food computable, as I described to you earlier. And in this process, we realized that to be able to come up or to be able to have an area such as food and gastronomy converted into a computational science altogether, computational gastronomy, we need to have quality curated data. It cannot become a data science in the absence of good quality and a curated data. And that is where our endeavor began in trying to put together data resources which can be used in the context of food and can be used for coming up with interesting data-driven food innovations. In this futuristic view that I'm presenting about computational gastronomy, I'll be telling you about what are the interesting thoughts that have emerged apart from applications in the context of recipes, followed by the molecular space in terms of the flavor molecules and the taste and odor of the molecules which go into the natural ingredients, what interesting questions we have asked in that direction. And finally, the nutrition and the health aspect of it, about what we have been able to do, is something that I'm going to explain to you. We, uncharacteristically, I must say, were one of the early labs taking lead in creating data repositories such as RecipeDB and FlavorDB. these databases, which are published in places such as Database OUP and Nucleic Acid Research OUP, Oxford University Press, they provide us one of the most comprehensive repository of structured data pertaining to traditional recipes and the flavor molecules that go into the natural ingredients respectively. RecipeDB, for example, is a structured repository of more than 118,000 recipes from across the world cuisines. It comprises of more than 26 cuisines and 84 countries from where the recipes have been compiled using online repositories. In fact, this paper could not have been published, this research could not have been conducted in the absence of algorithms that were independently published in computer science journals for named entity recognitions and nutritional value profiling of recipes. So this recipe database provides us ways for querying, searching the recipes, such as show me a French recipe having no onion and has calories between 500 to 700 kilocalorie, for example. And similar kind of queries can be performed so as to get the desired recipes from RecipeDB. As I said, it also provides you information about the flavor molecules, links it to the FlavorDB by providing the information of flavor molecules and also the estimated nutritional profile of a given recipe. The second thing is FlavorDB. We had noticed that while there are scattered data available about the flavor molecules that are found in the onion, the chilies, and the tomatoes, turns out that there is no single repository which provides a one-stop solution when somebody is trying to look for flavor molecules which are present in different ingredients and what are the flavor attributes, the taste and odor attributes that these molecules have. And therefore, by digging out data from a variety of repositories, including books as well as published research, we created this most comprehensive data repository of flavor molecules, which is now made available publicly for anyone who would like to use it, leverage it for non-commercial applications. In fact, very recently we have come up with the second version of this, the FlavorDB 2.0, which is available on archive as a preprint. We didn't stop by investigating and finding out the culinary fingerprints of regional cuisines of India. We went ahead and looked at these world cuisines, in which we investigated close to 145,000 recipes from different parts of the world and found out their culinary fingerprints. Notice when I say culinary fingerprint, here I am essentially talking about what makes a particular cuisine or recipes of a cuisine unique in terms of the combination of ingredients that it uses compared to the rest of the world cuisine. And that's what the fingerprinting is all about. This paper was so important that it won the Best Paper Award in the IEEE International Conference on Data Engineering, since there was no other previous research which had shown in the most extensive fashion the culinary fingerprints of the world cuisines. I'm not sure how many of you have come across the tree of languages, the world languages, in which one tries to investigate similarities, the phonetic and structural similarities across different languages, showing us a Germanic tree versus that of Indo-Arabic tree, a branch versus similar kind of branches that have evolved over a period of time. What we have done here is to look at the world cuisines and figured out ways by which, using culinary fingerprints, we can find out similarities and dissimilarities between different cuisines. This is reminiscent of a typical phylogenetic kind of a tree, although it is not a phylogenetic tree. We are simply looking at the cosine similarities and similar kind of similarity measures across different cuisines, trying to find ways by which we can establish the closeness or far away or the distance between different cuisines in terms of how they are separated from each other. And we see some interesting patterns here in terms of the Eastern and Southeast Asian cuisines being close to each other, whereas the European cuisines somehow seem to have gotten fragmented into different branches. some close to the African and Mexican cuisines versus the others being much closer to other European cuisines. So this is the first ever world cuisine tree that we have investigated and published way back again in ICDE, apart from doing some interesting evolutionary analysis, trying to find out how cuisine may have evolved over a time using simple physics-based models published in Physica A. One of the most exciting study and investigation that is undergoing in my lab is to ask this question about how many recipes are theoretically possible. Think about it. How many recipes do you think across the world cuisines might be there? And if I pose this question point blank to you, you might come up with certain answers which could be in the range of maybe a few 100,000 or maybe tens of 100,000 or a million for that matter. Well, in reality, when you go ahead and compile recipes from the online repositories, and if you were to add even the offline repositories, such as books which have been published over a period of time, I'm sure we are not going to exceed this number, which is around a few million at the most, not more than that. Question is, given the fact that a typical recipe has got 10 ingredients in it, there are 10 slots in a typical recipe, given that it's a Gaussian distribution with a mean of 10, and that there are at least 1,000 ingredients. This is after conflating a variety of ingredients of onions into single onion, chilies into single chili, and tomatoes into single tomato. If you do that also, you would still have, as a conservative estimate, 10 to the power 30 recipes. Now I know you would object to this by saying that not all combinations would be palatable. You're right about it. Even after putting a sieve of palatability and taste, the number still, what would be left out, estimated number, would be very large. This number that we are staring at is more than the number of stars that are there in the whole universe. So question is, how do we realize these recipes which somehow cultural evolution has bypassed? Can you come up with new recipes? And this is the prospect which culinary enthusiasts, chefs, and food practitioners would be extremely excited by, given the fact that the food industry is challenged with the notion of, can you come up with new recipes altogether? That's what is one of the problems that is being straddled by the food industry. I don't know how many of you have seen this movie Ratatouille. You know, some of you who must have seen this movie, The Adventure of a Rat into the Culinary World of Human Beings, must be smiling in your cheeks and would remember Chef Gustav saying in this movie repeatedly that anyone can cook. Question is, can computers cook? And that is the pertinent question we are asking in my lab for the last 1 to 1.5 years. The idea here is to see if it is possible for us to learn from existing repository of recipes, traditional recipes, and come up with novel recipes altogether. Can we do that? Can we use the tools of natural language processing and machine learning to be able to generate completely new recipes, which are not only palatable, but are tasty and hopefully healthy, and to add to it, probably environmentally sustainable? Notice that's another problem that we are going to face very soon. The food that we are consuming, is it also environmentally sustainable? Can we live with the kind of food that we are consuming? The food systems, will that be sustainable as we go along into 2050s, 60s, and 70s? That's what one of the questions that will be asked. We have worked on this problem and have published an interesting paper, a strategy, in a very prestigious natural language processing conference called COLING a couple of years back, where we proposed a strategy using which one can look at the so-called named entities, which represent nothing but ingredients, quantity, unit, state, temperature, utensils, and the processing that is applied on the ingredients. Can you put them together in unique manners to be able to create new recipes? So here is the tool, Ratatouille. The URL is being flashed in front of you. Ratatouille 2 is now out. It's again published in the latest ICD conference, wherein we provide you a tool where you can choose ingredients that you like and create a novel recipe, which the algorithm is going to pop out for you. So this is the page on which you can choose ingredients that you like and ask the algorithm, Ratatouille algorithm, to generate a novel recipe, and it will pop out a new recipe for you. You may want to choose Ratatouille 2 vis-a-vis Ratatouille, which has got an advantage in terms of providing the quantity and unit which Ratatouille did not provide. So we have both the algorithms available, but Ratatouille 2 is obviously an improved version of the algorithm that we have created. This is one of the examples of novel recipe that has been created by Ratatouille, wherein it provides you a step-by-step instructions apart from the ingredients that should be put into the recipe, such that you can start with something like take chicken in a large soup pot, season it, and all the way up to serving it. So serving instructions are also provided apart from processing, using additional ingredients that may be used in the recipe. So that was the dimension of recipes and interesting questions that we have been asking in terms of evolution of recipes, characterization of recipe in terms of culinary fingerprints, creating the cuisine tree, world cuisine tree, and novel recipe generation. Can we come up with new recipes at all? We are, of course, improving this algorithm based on the demand from the industry for creating recipes which are not only novel, but are also pertaining to, are similar to a particular cuisine. So, for example, you might want to say that I want a French cuisine-like recipe, a recipe which is very much similar to that of a French or a Brazilian or a Mexican or Indonesian, whatever you would like. And we should be able to generate a recipe which matches in terms of its culinary fingerprint, the characteristics with that of the original cuisine. Similarly, we are trying to create constraint-based novel recipe generations based on price tag, about what is the estimated price that you are willing to pay for the recipe, as well as the nutritional profile in terms of what is the calorific profile that you would like to have for the cuisine. And finally, its carbon footprint in terms of ecological sustainability. Can you find a way by which you can reduce the carbon footprint of the recipe is the question that we are also asking. Moving forward, in the space of molecules, as I said earlier, we have created FlavorDB. The URL is flashed in front of you. Those of you who are interested should be able to log into this place and explore the flavor molecules that are present in natural ingredients, and also do what is called as the food pairing, where if you would like to find out what is most similar to cinnamon, or which ingredient is most similar to cinnamon in terms of shared molecules, flavor molecules, or mango or tamarind, whatever you wish to, you can actually do this experiment, and it will go through a large number of pairwise combinations and pop up the most close answer to you. Having created curated database of flavor molecules, we have also created a compilation of small molecules which are categorically put into different taste baskets, the bitter, sweet, and tasteless basket. We also obviously are investigating umami and sour and salty tastes, but the number of molecules for these tastes are very limited, restricting our experiment in that direction. We have worked on the bittersweet axis, and the question that we asked was this: provided a new molecule is given to me, a small molecule is provided to me, can I, by looking at its chemical structure, make a prediction about what taste it may have, bitter, sweet, or tasteless, if I could categorically put into one of the baskets? And we have developed state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms and published this in a couple of years back in scientific reports, wherein there are three things available to you. One, the data set itself is made publicly available. The software which is used behind this algorithm is made available on GitHub. So you can download it and improvise upon it if you wish to do so. And the last thing is that the web server, which is the URL of which is being flashed in front of you, is made available in a user-friendly manner so that those of you who are not much interested in coding or improving the software further would like to still experiment by drawing the structure or by providing the smile file of the molecules as an input to predicted taste, the software will still be able to do it. So this is the second direction. Again, industry is interested in this because there is a completely new industry which has emerged in the artificial sweetener dimension, which would like to find out newer and newer molecules which have less calorific value load, but at the same time are sweet, to replace the sugar that we tend to consume on a day-to-day basis and is considered to be one of the problems behind type 2 diabetes. The last dimension that I'm going to touch upon is that of the health. All of you must have come across contradictory assertions about how a given food ingredient is good and at the same time bad for you, all based on scientific evidence, based on empirical research that has been done. These are all published papers which are available on PubMed, Medline, which provide you such contradictory evidences oftentimes about the good and bad aspect of different food ingredients. The question that we asked is that, how do you find out meaningful inferences from such assertions which are being made over time? That is where we dug out, using a text mining algorithm, more than 38,000 research articles on Medline for the last 90 years, published data of last 90 years, and looked into the title and the abstract of these articles. We didn't go into the details of the paper in terms of the introduction and the results sections, but we only focused on the title and the abstract. As long as a sentence had mention of an ingredient, food ingredient, which was identified using a state-of-the-art named entity recognition algorithm, as well as a disease, a medical subject heading, specific medical subject heading, and an association between the two is established using natural language processing algorithms. Partly they were obviously manually tagged for a large number of articles. A machine learning algorithm was built to make predictions with a very high accuracy, state-of-the-art accuracy, and rest of the articles where predictions were made for the rest of the articles in terms of positive and negative associations of food and diseases. All of this data has been put together as a single repository to begin with as SpiceRx. So the experiment was started with only by looking at culinary herbs and spices, wherein we looked at 165 odd herbs and spices which are used in the recipes and figured out this data triangle of name of the food entity, culinary herb and spice, the phytochemicals which are noted, reportedly found in those, and the disease association that these ingredients are known to have, apart from the chemical and disease association. So all of these triangular relationships were mined to come up with SpiceRx, the database which is available for searching and for finding out relationship in terms of identification of chemicals which are potentially effective against a disease or an ingredient which is reportedly known to be beneficial or harmful against a particular disease category. In fact, we published an investigation of this database in terms of this article in PLOS ONE, where we showed that culinary herbs and spices tend to have broad spectrum benefits, as opposed to the adverse effects. These tend to have a wide spectrum of beneficial effects across the tree of medical subject headings. That's what we showed up. And this pointed to the fact that culinary herbs and spices are not necessarily used primarily because of their fragrance and flavor, or for that matter, because of their antimicrobial properties, which have been known for a while now, but they are also used potentially because of their beneficial effects against a wide spectrum of disorders beyond antimicrobial properties. The work was extended beyond Spice RX and we looked at more than 2,000 odd natural ingredients which go into the recipes. In fact, to be specific, we have 2,222 ingredients and a large number of disease topics as found in medical subject heading, and information bracket was created to identify food disease association, map the chemicals of the food and the gene chemical linkage. The only linkage of all the yellow lines which are shown here that is missing in our data is that of food gene association, for which we could not find any existing repository which can provide us reliable information. Barring for that, all other pairwise associations are available from externally available empirical databases, which have been integrated together to create DietRx, which is a explorable a database which can be explored for association between food, disease, chemical, and genes. In my opinion, computational gastronomy is taking us into a space where variety of interesting applications can be developed, including personalized nutrition. Nutrition is highly personal, in my opinion. And this was indicated by this landmark article published from Weizmann Institution in 2015 in Cell, wherein they showed that despite the fact that the same meal was consumed in the breakfast by a large number of individuals, the postprandial glucose level, the post-meal increase in glucose in all of these individuals was not generically higher or lower. They had different responses. And obviously, these unique responses of individuals can be pointed out to a variety of factors, which includes gut microbiome, the blood parameters, the body mass index, and the exercise that they're having, and other lifestyle parameters that can be enumerated. So these guys, this research team, created a machine learning algorithm, which is referred to here as personalized nutrition predictor, which took in a variety of these parameters and tried to map it to the postprandial glucose level, and was doing a great job and making a prediction which was far, far better than the existing state of the art, which was based on the nutritional parameters, showing us a way towards making food personalized. Can we have food recommendations which are made based on the individual body parameters? The answer seems to be the yes, and perhaps it is going to happen sooner than later. So in summary, computational gastronomy, in my opinion, is a revolutionary new niche which blends food with tools of computer science such as artificial intelligence, trying to come up with amazing applications in the food space and gastronomy space, such as food beverage pairing. I don't know how many of you have heard about the pairings that are done with beverages, including alcoholic beverages. So food beverage pairings, which are liked by a lot of individuals, a population, making prediction of taste and odor of small molecules, including peptides, finding culinary fingerprints of regional cuisines, thereby trying to identify the idiosyncratic patterns that have got imbibed into different populations, different cultures, finding ways of dietary interventions directed against specific diet-linked disorders, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disorders, identification of ways of new food and beverages design based on the patterns that we are finding in the food. And importantly, as we look into a future which is ecologically sustainable, can you find ways by which you can make food sustainable? As I told you, we are already working in these directions to identify culinary carbon footprint of the recipes, so as to create recipes. First, find out the carbon footprint and find ways of creating recipes which are ecologically sustainable. And this adventure that I have been part of for the last 7 years which I kind of described to you in the last few minutes, I'm going to put it together as a popular science book, which is tentatively titled as Bite, the Digital Science of Food, wherein we're going to explain how data science, artificial intelligence, and computer science in general can be used in the context of food and gastronomy to bring a new revolution altogether, changing the landscape, the food landscape globally from farm to the fork. So this is my journey. As I said, as a teenager, I always aspired to be an astronomer, could never become one. This is the quote from none other than Brilla Savarin, the author of Physiology of Taste, and the one who coined the term gastronomy in the first place, roughly 150 years back. The discovery of a new dish confers more happiness on humanity than the discovery of a new star. So while I have not been able to discover new stars, I hope through this journey and by collaborating with a large number of other colleagues, I should be able to generate and create new dishes which will make humanity not only happier, but hopefully healthier. So thank you, all of you, for listening to me patiently. This is my email ID and the lab URL where all the resources are available for non-commercial application developments. And of course, very briefly, I would like to thank a huge team of more than 100 students who have contributed over time to this in this journey of computational gastronomy, PhD students, MTechs, BTechs, and summer interns, all of these. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Professor Bagler. This was really, really informative talk, and to me, it was very novel work that I have seen so far. And you have talked about how to make food computable, different repository like RecipeDB and FlavorDB, Culinary fingerprints of the world cuisine, and also taste prediction, and so on. So the chat box is open. Now participants are welcome to ask their questions. And thanks again, Professor Bagler. And maybe I would read out a few questions from the chat box.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what are the clinical significance and antimicrobial characteristics and activity of certain spices and their fragrances? And what is the future of spice research using AI in healthcare? By Dr. Kaushal Kumar.
Yeah, I'm trying to read up in the chat box also. Yeah, clinical significance and okay. So Dr. Kaushal Kumar. So what we have found is that couple of things. One, not only in the context of Indian cuisine, but also in the context of a variety of cuisines across the world, but mainly from the Eastern cuisines, spices are extremely critical. The placement of spices, not the quantity, is extremely critical in deciding what they are in the composition of the recipes. And they do have antimicrobial properties as well as a variety of other properties which are useful against useful for building up the immune system, as well as gut microbiome changes, etc. So this is what we have figured out in the context of research that we have done around culinary herbs and spices. And I do believe that databases such as SpiceRx do provide leverage for using artificial intelligence in the context of herbs and spices, and to investigate the data around culinary herbs and spices.
Thank you so much. I hope that answers the questions. And the second question is how the taste of food is going to be checked by these tools, because taste differs region-wide. So different region, different taste.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? Because different foods?
It is by Mohini. How the taste of food is going to be checked by these tools, because taste differs region-wise.
Okay, let's put it this way: that the sense of taste is extremely personal. What we are trying to do is to obviously take an approach which a typical physicist or a mathematician would like to take, wherein we are trying to do the coarse graining of data, meaning that right now, for the sake of simplicity, we are going to say that, say for example, all Maharashtrian recipes which are present in Maharashtrian cuisine are typically liked by Maharashtrian people. While I agree that there would be differences from individual to individual, even within that space, or even within Maharashtra, or those who consume Maharashtrian food, just to give an illustration, right? So we are ignoring those individual level differences to begin with, put them in a coarse-grained bundle, and are investigating them, considering that to be the generic taste experienced by that population, right? To be able to go to the individual level, we need to obviously collect data for individual person and probably their genetic information to be able to come up with more informed information, thoughts about it, which so far we have not done. And this work is obviously needed to be done. And I strongly believe that computational gastronomy is where physics was way back in 18th century. So we are just beginning, and such explorations need to be done as we go along.
Thank you so much for answering the question. So Professor Rita Sharma has asked one question. Have you tried to use Culinary fingerprint data to correlate with incidences of non-communicable diseases in different parts of the world?
Okay, so that's a good question. While we have found out patterns coming from different parts of the cuisines, different parts of the world, different cultures, we have not got enough information about the non-communicable diseases, patterns in the non-communicable diseases, which are also mapped to the same cultures. They are available from different countries, but not necessarily to cultural mappings are not necessarily available. And that is what has stopped us from coming up with inferences, mapping or associating food consumption pattern with that of the non-communicable diseases. But we are in the process of collecting the data in collaboration with some medical practitioners, where we are pulling information about the kind of food that is consumed by individuals, as well as the kind of non-communicable diseases that they suffer from, so that we can come up with meaningful inferences based on that.
Thank you so much. Next question is, will climate or location also be some of the factors that will determine which recipes are generated?
Very much, yes. The geography, climate, genetics, not to forget the price part of it, and some other factors, historical factors, play a huge role in terms of what kind of recipes are generated in different parts of the world. Today, as we are globalized, looks like a large set of ingredients which were not otherwise available to us, let's say in the Indian subcontinent a few hundred years back, are easily available to us. But at the same time, this wasn't the case a few hundred years back. So yes, the answer to your question is indeed geography, climate, culture, and to an extent genetics do play a role in shaping the recipes that are consumed in a place.
The last question is from Anuja Jain. What algorithm you use to predict novel recipes?
Okay, so these are deep learning algorithms that we have built, which are using information structure of the recipes that are available in the traditional recipes, and are predicting based on that novel recipes. And what I would like to do to be able to provide more technical information about this is to point at our research, which is going to be up on archive very soon. We have submitted it, but it's on the hold at the moment. Or you can search by Ratatouille and my name, and you should be able to find out the paper which is already published in ICDE.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Professor Bagler, for finding time and giving the lecture. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you.
So we will move on to the next speaker. So Megha will be chairing.